My name is Alicia Shapiro with AiNews.com, and welcome to another episode of our Driving Tomorrow Conversations with Industry Leaders, where we explore the real world impact of artificial intelligence across industries. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Sam Allen, CEO of Iterable, an AI powered customer communication platform that helps brands like Priceline, Redfin, and Calm deliver real time personalized engagement at scale. Iterable was recently named a strong performer in the Forrester Wave email marketing service providers for the first quarter of 2026, earning top marks in innovation, recognition that reflects how the company is helping marketers move faster and deliver more intelligent cross-channel experiences with AI. In today's conversation, we'll explore what some are calling the SaaSpocalypse, the idea that SaaS is dying, and why Sam believes that narrative is missing the real issue, how software may be cheap, but distribution is where companies win or lose. So thank you so much for joining me today, Sam.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad to have you here. So I'm going to start with a big picture customer expectations question first.
Sure.
And customer expectations are evolving quickly in the age of AI. From your perspective, what does modern customer engagement look like today? And how are those expectations changing as AI is more embedded in how companies interact with their customers?
Yeah, I think actually I'm going to take a little bit different spin on that. If you think
Sure.
about the everyday use, everyone is now using AI. My
Yeah.
wife's a fourth grade teacher. She uses it for lesson plans and helping communicate and all that. And the immediacy and quality of response is starting to make people think that's what I want how I engage with brands, and
Hmm.
that's what I expect to see when I engage with companies.
Oh.
And so what that's doing is it's driving consumer expectations to completely change in terms of relevance, personalization, and frankly, immediacy. And so the expectation of a consumer or a customer of a brand is that they're getting the exact same quality of response and speediness of response from that brand that they do when they go to ChatGPT or Claude to type in a question. And I think that's what's really driving a lot of the change in the pace in the market.
I never thought about that particular aspect before, is that the quickness and accuracy that comes from the LLMs now customers are expecting from brands. That's interesting. And I'm sure it has to do with personalization too. The customers are expecting more personalization from brands
Yep.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, very much. The brands that are doing this right are the ones that understand that this kind of micro personalization is super important and that
Mhm.
it's not just the old batch and blast type of marketing energy that's being put into demand generation. It's got to be much more personalized, much higher scale, and a much higher relevance.
That's good to know. Yeah. And we touched on this in the introduction about the SaaS apocalypse. There's a lot of discussion around it right now. But what's your take on that? And what do you think people are getting wrong about where SaaS is headed?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So I've been in Iterable for 8 months. Before that, I was 11 years at Salesforce, the progenitor alpha dog of the SaaS space.
Yeah.
And they're certainly taking their chops right now. So I think there's a lot of things that go into this. First and foremost, I do think it's a little bit overblown. First of all, tectonic shifts in technology always leave a trail of dead companies in their wake. And I think the ones that don't have strong data governance are the ones that are going to be in trouble with the rapid adoption of AI because AI, like many tools, if the underlying infrastructure, underlying data isn't good and solid, then the results are going to be pretty crappy. And so I think the SaaS companies, like my former employer, are actually going to come out of this thing not only fine, but probably on top. I also wouldn't be one to bet against Mark Benioff, but I do think that there are companies that are struggling. And I think that one of the key things about what's driving the SaaS apocalypse is the world of the shift from seat licenses to consumer-based, consumption-based models. And for a lot of SaaS companies, for most SaaS companies, it's you have 5 employees, I sell you 5 licenses, right? And that's not what is going on with AI models. And so that's what's driving a lot of the erosion of SaaS value. And so I do think there are companies that are going to struggle with seat license maturation of their model. Those are the ones that are going to be in trouble. If they can't figure out how to shift to a usage-based model, a consumption-based model, one that makes sense and one that their customers are asking for, those are going to be the people that aren't going to make it through this wave.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just like marketing, marketers are having to do the same thing. They're having to redesign their whole workflows and products are no longer five different tools. They're becoming part of a platform or a flow. And it's interesting how things are changing, and it's part of human nature to be like, oh, I hate change. I don't want to do this, but that's what you need to do in order to stay relevant in AI now.
Yeah, and you've got, like, frankly, if you're afraid of change, then that's how you get eaten up by your competition. And you're
Yeah.
right. The old ways of doing marketing was develop a bunch of campaigns, do some analysis, put those campaigns in market, see how they perform. That whole process could take weeks. And to my point earlier, people want instantaneous kind of results. And at Iterable, actually this week, we're announcing the launch of some of our new Nova-based agents that do
Oh,
just that. So it's rapid journey creation, go-to-market strategy, instantaneous feedback, and then taking that feedback and then relaunching the journey in a way that's relevant and timely to those users. Being in front of this change is really important.
oh yeah. Actually, can you talk a little bit more about the Nova agents? I'd like to know more about what they're doing. Are they helping with the personalization, being able to respond faster and more in tune with what the
Yeah.
customer intent is, or
Yeah, so it's a set of different things, but I'll boil it down to a couple
okay.
of buckets. One is really about reading customer signal. So what intent are you seeing coming in through the customer interaction? And
Mhm.
then there's a whole bucket of decision making. Okay, so the signal from the customer is telling us this. What does that mean? And then, of course, there's the optimization and activation across different channels. And
Yeah.
so whereas you might be searching for sportswear equipment for your son, and price is really important, and you like to interact by email, I might be looking for a new bonnet for my car. Price is of no issue. And I love to go through text because I'm a mobile executive.
Mhm.
And so what our system does is recognizes that you're not in a cohort of people, you're a person. And
Yeah.
the way that you have interacted with brands in the past or a specific brand tells us what you need, and we optimize for that. And then as we get continued signal from you and how you interact with the brand, then we actually create next best action for the system and for the marketer before they even have to think about it.
Mhm.
The other thing that we do is allow some great analytical capabilities. So
Mm.
I mentioned this earlier. I used to run these campaigns and you have to bring all the data back and
Yeah.
agonize over it and do a bunch of analytics over weeks. Our system actually tells you instantaneously, here's what you should be doing next.
Wow.
And one of the things that we do as a philosophy is because AI has created a lot of, frankly, caution or even mistrust, people are too nervous to actually hit the go button. And
Oh.
so what our mentality, our philosophy has been that we want to always allow you to understand where the data is coming from. So our kind of user pain, we'll tell you exactly the data set we got the recommendation from, why we're making the recommendation, which signal to help score that recommendation, and then you can interrogate the data so that the practitioner doesn't feel like they're completely hands off the wheel. And I think that's a really important part of what we do.
Oh, for sure, because especially being having those suggestions of what to do next, and here's where the customer might need some extra help or whatever. It kind of helps the businesses who may not have as many resources or may not have
Yeah.
as many tech people. They can go, oh, great, and they still be able to service their customer just as well. And that's great. It's so
Yeah.
exciting. Yeah. And you said that software is cheap, but distribution is expensive. So, can you what you mean by that and why distribution is
Yeah.
becoming such a critical differentiator?
So we're in this world where anybody can vibe code anything,
Hmm.
and that's great. And it's dramatically increasing the cycles of software development, and that's also great. So that's what I meant by code is cheap. I don't have to hire
Yeah.
50 engineers. I can hire 5 engineers and a designer and get the same output. But at some point, somebody has to market, sell, and support that capability.
Mhm.
And although there are components that can certainly be helped along or even compensated with AI, at the end of the day, you've got to, in my world, I'm talking about enterprise software, you have to
Mhm.
hire salespeople.
Yeah.
And if you're going to sell a product to a bank or to a large retailer, they will be happy to do tier one, low level customer support with an agent. But when something breaks in the middle of the night and they can't ship product or they can't return things, they're going to pick up the phone and call somebody.
Yeah.
And so where I think a lot of these vibe coded startups are failing is they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I put a great product in the market, but I can't distribute it. I can't support it. And then if you want to go to certain parts of the enterprise, try selling a brand new product to a bank. They are highly regulated. You've got to meet all these privacy, trust, and security constraints. Sure, you can vibe code your way there, but without years of historical context on what those things mean and how to prioritize, It's really difficult. And we're awash in hundreds, if not thousands, of venture-backed companies in the AI space that a lot of them are for sale right now because they did develop a great product, but they just can't get past $5 or $6 million of ARR. So that's what I
Mhm.
mean by distribution is expensive. You've got to go build those capabilities
Yeah.
in the certainly in the enterprise space.
Yeah, vibe coding's only going to get you so far.
Yeah.
Even in small businesses, I would imagine it would be it lowers the barrier to some things, but then you still don't know if the security back end is good enough to keep breaches out or
Yeah.
things like that. And so, yeah, you need to hire people to
Yeah.
look over that.
You just hit on it. You can have the most amazing product in the world, but if you have a data breach in our world today, your reputations, especially as a small company, it's
Oh,
over.
yeah.
And I just caution folks, I'm not saying it can't be done, but just be wary of you can put a great product in market, but that's just one of the initial steps that you've got to do to become a great software company.
Yeah, for sure. And when you look at companies who are adopting AI today, what separates the organizations that are successfully deploying and scaling AI from those that are still struggling to move beyond the experimentation?
Yeah, I think first it's just getting something done and getting into production. So I
Mhm.
think there's just a lot of testing and trial, and then people are constantly trying to fully optimize and is this really perfect and
Mm,
all that. And my philosophy has always been like a lot of people, it's just get me most of the way there and we'll
yeah.
learn as we go. And so I think just getting over that hump and getting into production is really important. At my company, Iterable, we're really applying AI to assist workflows all over the place, and not just in engineering, but all over the place. Actually, one of the most advanced AI practitioners in our company is in our HR department, and
Oh,
that's really impressive. But
yeah.
what we discovered is that we really need to help our employees along this journey.
Mm.
So what we did was we created distinct learning paths, and we have basically three of them. It's like and 101 is for the people who are curious, not really sure how to get started. 201 is for folks that have built some models and they're ready to take the next level. And 301 is for people who are really advanced. They are vibe coding products. They're like replacing parts of their workflow every day. And I think that's important. And then the last step is I mandated at my company that we have to now interview for AI proficiency. That doesn't mean you have to be an AI expert, but if you don't know how to write a prompt, I don't care what your job role is, you probably don't have a home here. And that applies to me too. I am constantly learning, trying to figure out these tools and everything else. So it applies to everybody.
I love how you said that you're educating your staff too, because that helps with buy in. It helps them understand how AI helps the workflows, helps the business. They're not as afraid that it's going to take their job and they're willing to participate more. So I think that's so important. I think you're
Yeah,
right.
100%.
Yeah. And there's often a lot of focus on the building of AI, but there's a little bit less discussion around what happens afterwards. What
Mhm.
are some of the biggest challenges companies face when it comes to deploying, tuning, and maintaining AI systems in a real world environment?
Yeah, there's kind of two ways I'm thinking about this. The first one is today I'm hearing just a smattering of customers saying, oh, hey, I think we can now go vibe code the product that you spent 13 years building.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's very dangerous. First of all, it pulls them away from whatever their true core competency is. And secondly, it shows a bit of naivete around the levels of compliance that we talked about earlier required to really drive enterprise software across a wide variety of data sources and countries and compliance stacks and all that. I think that's one bucket. We
Mhm.
also found that this is learning from us, while we were trying to dramatically increase our throughput on our software development, we were able to do that dramatically. But all we did was move the bottleneck down the supply chain. And so now we've got this backup, for lack of a better way to say it, on the quality control component of code development. So now we're starting to apply a bunch of AI capabilities and skill sets there. And so I think people need to think about this as an old school supply chain, raw product in the front, finished product out the back. Because if you just look at one section, you might optimize that, but you're not going to optimize the whole supply chain.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really important mindset for companies to keep as they think through development or installing and instituting AI practices.
I think that's important what you said. I don't know if maybe you posted this on LinkedIn and that's where I saw it, but I did read somewhere on LinkedIn within the last week or two that the AI, once you start working and embed AI into your workflows and operations, you do find that the bottleneck moves, it
Mhm.
changes.
Huh.
And that's interesting that
Yeah, that wasn't me, but
that
I'm
wasn't you.
glad. I'm
Okay.
glad other people are thinking that way.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that's interesting. But as AI becomes more embedded in business operations, how are governance, trust, and accountability shaping the enterprise adoptions? And what are buyers really looking for before they commit?
nobody wants to get sued.
Yeah.
That's kind of important first thing.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned earlier, certainly nobody wants a data breach.
Yeah.
And the higher into the enterprise you go, like we talked a little bit ago about even for small, medium business, you can start to get in the danger zone. When you get into these large, complex, multinational enterprise companies and or highly regulated verticals like banking or healthcare, there is really zero tolerance for shaky platform, lack of security. And so I think spending the time and energy to really figure that out is super important. And that's what's driving a lot of the lack to your question of adoption
Hmm.
is again, you can make an amazing looking product on the surface. I'll give you an example. I was speaking with an entrepreneur, brilliant guy, got this product in market in 4 months. And he wanted to speak to me because I have some Defense Department stuff in my background. And he said, I think this would be a killer opportunity for the government. I said, okay, are you FedRAMP certified yet? And he said, I don't know what that is. I said, okay,
No.
then you can't even talk to the government until you become FedRAMP certified.
Yeah.
And that's a process that you have to follow. That's going to take you probably 2 years. And so just this kind of lack of, again, understanding of how things get done at large, complex scale is what's really holding a lot of people back. And it's what's keeping companies, government or otherwise, from adopting some of these really advanced technologies because they just, in their mind, they can't get their head around, is that thing safe? Is it secure? Does it meet all my compliance requirements? Or am I going to have a data breach or am I going to get sued by somebody? And so
Yeah.
that's where a lot of the pause is coming on broad scale adoption.
And I think once you get the governance and the guardrails and everything in place, that becomes your foundation and it's easier to then build your product on top of it. But
Yeah.
yeah.
It's hard to, I don't want to believe in a world where humans don't participate anymore.
Yeah.
And as people, especially in leadership roles, you do want to see proofs of success. So you
Mm.
want to see, okay, if I'm a bank, how many other banks have deployed your software, right?
Okay.
If I'm a
Yeah.
retailer, show me the other five retailers that deployed it and how it performed for them. It becomes a bit of a chicken and the egg with these smaller companies.
Mm.
And so that's part of the obstacle to adoption is people's jobs are at risk when they deploy new technologies. And if they are the first one to deploy it in their sector, it's just going to give them pause. And
Yeah.
so that's why the big companies, the Salesforce, the ServiceNows, Microsofts, they always have an advantage because they are so installed. They're quote unquote safe. So they're not free of the concerns what AI is doing to that market, as we talked about earlier, but they do have a leg up because they have such a massive scale.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And looking ahead, where do you see the biggest opportunities or risks in AI and SaaS over the next few years? And what should leaders be doing now to make sure they're positioned to succeed?
Yeah. So I think from a risk perspective, we touched on it, but everybody, every employee in every single role has to be an AI native.
Yeah.
And I think right now it's okay to be AI curious, for lack of a better way to say it. But AI at this scale didn't exist 2 years ago. And 2 years from now, it's going to be massively ubiquitous. And
Yeah.
people that aren't dramatically leaning in to these capabilities are really going to get left behind. And so I think the risk, and that you can apply that same logic to a company, whether it's an individual or a company.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's the largest risk because AI is not going away. It's
Right.
too phenomenal and tectonic of a shift in how we do things to not just be taken advantage of. And as I mentioned earlier, you need to be recruiting for that AI proficiency also.
Yeah.
I think from an opportunity perspective, this is all well known, but the dramatic throughput in workflows is really quite amazing. And I don't think we've even scratched the surface. We're in the middle of baseball season. To use a baseball analogy, we're like top of the first inning right now,
Yeah.
and already so much has been done. And so it just feeds back into the loop of this is why you need to be leaning in because you really got to understand where the market is going. And the opportunities are really endless.
Mm.
I think the risk that creates to circle back is you need to have a really strong ability to prioritize and not go chasing off in a million different directions, right? And so having a very strong vision of what you need to provide your customer base with and stick to that, it's going to be critical. Otherwise, the risk becomes you got people chasing all kinds of stuff all over the place.
That's true. That's great advice. And before we wrap up, I always love to ask, when you do step away from your work, what are some activities or hobbies you're passionate about?
I grew up in a blue collar work environment, and so I've always worked with my hands. And so I love to work on, I have an old 1964 Volkswagen. I work on that. I do woodworking. I work in the yard. I just love to get my hands literally dirty. I mountain bike in the winter. I ski. I try to get outside on the weekend and just leave all this stuff behind and just try and access a different part of my brain and put myself in positions that I don't find myself in Monday through Friday. And that really helps me disconnect, decompress, and then get really ready for the next week.
I think so too. And when you can take a break like that, it almost helps you process everything from the week before. And then now you've got a clearer idea of where you need to go ahead of the
Yeah,
rest is so
100%.
important.
Yeah.
It's underrated in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. You get amazed by what all of a sudden pops in your brain when
Yeah.
you're trying to figure out how to get the fuel stop leaking out of your carburetor.
Yes, it is. It's weird. Your brain
Yeah,
still is working in there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Sam, thank you so much for sharing your insights on what's really happening in enterprise AI with SaaS and AI and why distribution and trust and execution are becoming just as important as the technology innovation. So thank
Yeah.
you again for joining us.
Thank you, Alicia. This was great. Appreciate it. Love to chat in the future. Just let us know.
Okay, sounds good. And if anyone would like to learn more about Iterable, you can visit their website at iterable.com. Keeping you connected to tomorrow. Today, this is Alicia with AiNews.com.